Okay, well, I'd like to welcome you this nice sunny afternoon. You can see there I've got a subtitle. It says, "Is alcohol hurting us?" And I've said, even if we don't drink it, because the extent of alcohol reaches right out across society, as you'll see when I go through it. As I don't drink alcohol, perhaps I should explain my interest in the subject. A good friend of mine, a guy called Professor Graham Woodfield, who's retired from being director of the Auckland Blood Transfusion Centre and the World Authority on Red Blood Types. He used to be a member of this church, by the way, before he moved. We've done some research together on human blood, and while he asked me to join a group called GALA, which is Group Against Liquor Advertising. This was quite a few years ago. And while with GALA, the Law Commission was commissioned by the government to examine the need for reforming the liquor laws. And the president of the Law Commission, Sir Geoffrey Palmer, they brought out two volumes. I decided not to bring them because they're quite heavy, they're about that thick each. One of them was called Alcohol in Our Lives, an issues paper on the reform of New Zealand's liquor law. That was 2009. And they had an invitation to make submissions. So because I was in GALA, I organised writing an extensive submission, which was sort of research. It was about 17 pages. To provide things for this commission. And then once they'd all come in, they then produced another book publishing their findings, and this was called Alcohol in Our Lives, Curbing the Harm, 2010. And this was used to put to the government to suggest some law reform. So eventually some recommendations went to a select committee, which things to go to with the government, and I was then involved with another extensive submission to that committee. What did the government do? Well, Sir Geoffrey Palmer, this is in a speech done in August this year, so it's very current, and he said a number of things in talking about the Labour government. He said, "My first observation is that there appears to little or no interest in further reforms on New Zealand alcohol law in political circles. I do regard this as a pity." He also noted that the evidence gathered by the Commission was extraordinarily persuasive in presenting the case why law change was needed. And then the remarkable thing about the government response to the Law Commission's report was that the Prime Minister immediately rejected that recommendation as soon as the report was publicly announced. And then he continued, and it's on the screen, "The Law Commission recommended an Alcohol Harm Reduction Act. That is not what we got. The government said they had accepted 133 of 154 recommendations. This, however, was misleading when the ones that considered were not the ones that were accepted. The ones that accepted would have made the biggest difference. So the ones that would have made the biggest difference, they ignored. So they did a lot of window dressing. And so the national government did fat all. And they didn't follow up with recommendations that would reduce the harm from alcohol. And the Labour government has done no better. However, recently Andrew Little of the Labour Party, I was on TV, he said he's going to do something about it. So he's going to get some information soon when we've got it ready. Anyway, my talk is not about the government's response, but I need to set the scene. I'm also not going to talk about the liquor people themselves. I give a whole talk about that. I'm just going to concentrate on the alcohol itself, and I'm also going to look at the biblical part of it as well later on in the talk. So we're going to try and cover the sort of things associated with alcohol as far as we are concerned. Now, this group GALA was eventually disbanded, and we joined another group called Alcohol Action New Zealand, and this was chaired by a psychiatrist and addiction specialist called Professor Doug Silverman. Now, he's often been interviewed on TV. I've seen him a number of times, and so we joined up with him. And one of the things that we're very fortunate in New Zealand to have some world authorities on alcohol. We've got several people who are international in this respect. And about a year ago, I can't remember exactly, I decided to write a book on the subject and asked my friend Graham Woodfield, I mentioned earlier, to be a co-author, given all the work he's put in over the years. The book is finished. In fact, I was talking to him yesterday, and we're in the last stages of tidying up. It's about 208 pages, so it's not too big, but it has 450 references. I've researched the literature, the medical literature, very, very thoroughly, and you cannot avoid what it comes up with. We're still trying to decide a title. The current was New Zealand and Alcohol, a Global Love Affair. but that title will probably change. We want to have something about New Zealand and something about love affair. Anyway, that's in the making. This talk is a small subset of that book. Now, first thing I'm going to start with is what's in alcoholic drinks. And the New Zealand Medical Association, by the way, I should say that pure alcohol is either ethyl alcohol or ethanol. So I'll use the term ethanol. Now, according to the New Zealand Medical Association, ethanol has the following properties. It is an intoxicant that produces functional impairment in psychological and psychomotor performance. In other words, we know what that means, it affects your body and your brain. It is a toxin that has direct and indirect effects on a wide range of body organs and organ systems. It may contain carcinogenic contaminants, such as nitrosamines, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and mycotoxins, you get all that? As well as a wide variety of esters, etc. Anyway, it's got a lot of stuff in it we don't like, and I'll come back to that later. It's also an addictive psychotropic drug. Now, of course, some people don't recognise alcohol as a drug, even though it's classed as one. See, it actually depresses the central nervous system at high doses, but at lower doses it acts as a stimulant. So the low dose can push you up, and the high dose can make you depressed. And calling alcohol a drug, which it is important, even though drinkers might feel they're being unjudged fairly to say, I'm a drug taker when they drink alcohol. But pretending that alcohol is anything but a drug is, to me, head in the sand stuff. In fact, ethanol has been classified as a Group 1 carcinogen. That's the highest ratings for carcinogens by the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research in Cancer since 1988, along with, and these are interesting bedfellows, substances such as asbestos and formaldehyde. Okay? So we're not playing around with something that's okay from that point of view. The next thing is, what does alcohol do in the body? Well, it affects just about every biological system because it's a small molecule that goes everywhere in the body. So if there's food in the stomach, alcohol stays in the stomach longer, so more is absorbed through the stomach. And then an enzyme in the stomach has time to break down some of the alcohol before it moves into the intestines. Now, alcohol usually peaks in the blood after about 30 to 90 minutes, and then it's quickly moved around the body in the bloodstream to all parts of the body, so it circulates pretty quick. And it stays circulating in the blood until the liver is able to break it down. So the liver is the one that works on it. And about 90% of the breaking down of the alcohol to water and carbon dioxide and products the body uses for energy, that's performed by the liver. And with the rest excreted through the lungs, so they can do breath testing, and through the kidneys into urine and in sweat. Now, the liver can break down alcohol at the average weight of one standard drink per hour. That's 10 milligrams. So that's where the standard drink comes from. It's the amount the body can break down on average in 1 hour. Now, when alcohol gets into our body, it's oxidized to acetaldehyde. That's a carcinogen, it's cancer causing. If the amount of alcohol is quite small, it's metabolized almost entirely in the liver to harmless acetate. So if you only have a small amount, it gets converted. And the human cells can use this as sort of energy. But if it's too much, it overwhelms the liver and causes a build-up of acetaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. And its effect is different from men, women, and young people, and the elderly. I'm not that, of course. It depends on body size and metabolism, but I'm not going to go into details. There's lots of things I've got to be careful not to go down those paths. And of course, women get drunk more easily, but they appear to eliminate alcohol from the blood at a faster rate. And there can also be a racial factor, because there's some ethnic groups have different levels of a particular liver enzyme, which is responsible for the breakdown. And genetics actually plays quite an important part in alcohol. And in fact, there are some genes which can predispose a person to drinking more alcohol. So there is a strong genetic component, which I'm not going to talk about anymore. The other thing too is that alcohol beverages may also contain a variety of other carcinogenic contaminants. And these are produced during fermentation. Also too, alcohol is a diuretic. where it takes water out of your body and increases urine output. So it can cause dehydration in hot weather. Now what about young people? This is very important because this is where the industry in the past has been targeting. It's the younger end. Now, some young people have been using alcohol from the age of 10 to 15. And this is not a good time, as the alcohol can interfere with brain development when adolescents experience dramatic changes in their lives. And in fact, right through their teens and into their 20s, the brain continues to grow and change. And this is to do with the synapses, and I won't go into what they are, but they're basically gaps which are in the connections between brain cells. And they become more complex and more efficient as the person grows. So the brain is changing all the time, it's growing. And what can happen is that the alcohol can damage or even mess all this up. And it can destroy cells that make up the hippocampus. Now the hippocampus is that part deep in the brain that's responsible for learning and memory. Then you've got the prefrontal cortex, where hopefully something actually works in the brain. It's also affected by the consumption of alcohol. And this part of the brain, of course, is involved with planning complex cognitive behaviour, like me standing up here and talking, personality expression, decision making, and moderating social behaviour. Because this is why people who've been drinking might become irrational, overconfident, or less inhibited, because part of their brain's being affected. And what is unfortunate is that under most laws, young people are recognised as adults at 18. However, science, the growing body of society, says we mature much later than 18. And in fact, basically, most men, for example, their brains are not really properly developed until about 25 or older, and women, of course, are always ahead of us a few years before that. So if a person drinks too much alcohol, it can mess up their brain permanently. And they can see these effects. They can take scans and they can see the actual effects in the brain. All right, so since we talk about alcohol a lot, I want to say something about standard drink, because I mentioned that standard drink is how long it takes. It's the amount for the body to metabolize in the liver in 1 hour. So if you have a standard drink and then you wait an hour, you've cleared it pretty well out of your system. All right, so what as I said before, it's a drink of 10 grams of alcohol. And this is the definition recommended by the World Health Organization. But it does vary with country to country. And you'll find it varies quite considerably from say 9 grams to even up to 14 or 15 grams, depending on the country. But there's quite a wide range here. And what happens is that the kidneys filter the blood and they balance the amount of fluid in the body. It's all tied up with fluid. Now in New Zealand, a container of alcohol has to have the number of standard drinks. Okay, that's part of the law. And what happens is with drinking, the blood alcohol concentration rises and the feeling of intoxication occurs when alcohol is drunk faster than the liver can break it down. And unfortunately, a lot of New Zealanders don't know how much ethanol they've drunk on a particular occasion, nor how fast it is processed, nor how to pour a standard drink, nor how many standard drinks in a glass. I mean, for example, a bottle of wine can have 7.5 standard drinks. And so I've actually got up there, down the bottom there, it's not looks a bit fuzzy, I don't know if it's my eyes or the screen, but you can see there a standard drink is 330ml can of beer at 4%, it's not a lot. 100 milligrams of wine, that's not very much actually in a glass at 12.5%, or 3 mils of spirits at 42%. That's a standard drink. And for the average person, that's going to take an hour to metabolize that. Anyway, let's have a look at some consumption statistics. Alcohol consumption is very common in New Zealand, with 79% of individuals 15 years and over reporting drinking alcohol in the last 12 months. That's nearly 80% of the New Zealand population, which is pretty high. And that's according to the Ministry of Health. A lot of the figures I quote are Ministry of Health 2017. All the stuff's all heavily documented in the literature. And in New Zealand, with a population of 4.9 million people, 476 million litres of alcohol consumed in 2017. Now, if my maths is correct, that's 79 litres per person. That includes children, that includes people who don't drink like me. For those people who don't even know what a bottle looks like, and so on. So that's a lot of alcohol in this country. And what is really concerning is that people spent more than $4 billion per year, and New Zealand households spend on average the same on alcohol as fruit and vegetables. That was a shocker for me, I didn't realise that. It's also freely available. 75% of all alcohol is sold from off-licences, that's bottle stores, supermarkets, grocery stores. And supermarkets sell around 30% of all beers and 6% of all wines. And what is very concerning is women's drinking patterns have been increasing and becoming more like those of men. Drinking to intoxication, binge drinking, and basically the consumption of any amount right across all ages, particularly with young women. And this is where the alcohol industry has been doing some of its focusing, is on young women. And in particular, you'll see there mentioned alcopops. And what has been happening is that people have been buying these, and for example, for the age under 24, women have been averaging 24 litres of alcopops per year. That's alcohol which has been flavoured, right? And women in particular drink quite a bit of it. They like it because it contains twice the alcohol content of a standard beer, twice as much alcohol, and the sweetness of the drink disguises the alcohol taste, if you don't like it. And this is interesting. I didn't realise this fact, that they're very heavily targeted with social media. And it turned out that in 2018, Coca-Cola launched its first alcoholic drink, a lemon-flavoured alcopop. An alcopop is what's called a ready-to-drink, an RTD, an alcopop. And this was in Japan in the bid to tap new markets and consumers. And the product was aimed at a growing market of younger drinkers, especially women, and that's from a BBC News item in 2018. Then you've got preloading, and of course what happens is people drink up before they go out for a number of reasons. Perhaps avoid paying for the high-priced drinks at commercial drinking establishments, or to achieve extra drunkenness and enhance, quote, and extend the night out, and to socialise with friends, reduce social anxiety, or enhance male group bonding before going out. That's just quoting from a research paper. Heavy drinking is the serious thing. This is because 46% of all alcohol sold in New Zealand is consumed on very heavy drinking occasions. That's a lot. And what's happening in some countries is that there are fewer people drinking, but those that do drink more. So the actual amount is going up. Now this is what really annoys me, really gets under my goat, is in New Zealand we often read or hear the statement that the vast majority of New Zealanders that consume alcohol do in a responsible way without self-harm or harming others. And what did the Law Commission say about this? Basically said the statement is wrong. 1 in 5 drinkers and half of young drinkers usually drink enough to double their risk of injury, and nearly 1 in 3 drink over the daily recommended maximum and so face a greater than 1% risk of dying of an alcohol-related disease or injury. A few more statistics, not too many of these. But 5% of deaths in New Zealand are due to harmful use of alcohol. 1 in 20 deaths are due to harmful use of alcohol. About 33% of all offences are committed by people affected by alcohol. Alcohol was involved in 1 in 3 cases of violent offending and nearly half of all homicides. Then you've got social harm. In a large New Zealand national survey, 25% of respondents indicated they had at least one heavy drinker in their life. There's 1/4 of people somewhere or other have a connection with a heavy drinker, and with most of these people saying experience a range of harms from that person's drinking. In other words, other people can hurt you because of their drinking. And then 10% of New Zealanders reporting having to call the police at least once in the last 12 months because of someone else's drinking, corresponding to 3,078 just over nearly 380,000 New Zealanders make at least one call. You know, that's a drag on our resources, isn't it? Car crashes involving someone else's drinking were responsible for an annual average of about 5,500 injuries to innocent victims, including 60 deaths. And more than 40% of alcohol-related crash injuries in New Zealand are suffered by people who have not themselves been drinking. 40% from other people's problems. That's why I said at the beginning, alcohol can harm us even if we don't drink it. Then carrying on, we've got hospital admissions. 1 in 4 patients in New Zealand emergency departments, and this was a study done on a lot of departments, emergency departments in New Zealand, and it's also overseas as well. The clinical director of the Waikato Hospital Emergency Department said that the level of harm these people cause to their own health is bad enough, but they also divert time and resources from other patients, including older people and young children. They put undue strain on our emergency departments and can be rude, aggressive, or in the worst circumstances, even violent towards doctors and nurses. 1/3 of people that committed suicide had alcohol in their system. Alcohol contributes to approximately 60 medical conditions, and that's conservative. And the other worrying thing is that alcohol harms affected racially as well. It's high not only with Maori, but with also Pacific and lower socioeconomic population groups. And then it's also affecting our work, our industry. For example, in a year, 147,500 adults take 1 or more days off work or school due to their alcohol use. And this harm, that's been well documented, it's been on TV, this harm cost New Zealand about $7.5 billion per year. That's 2018, that figure, which is far more than what is spent purchasing the alcohol or the tax collected, which is just over $1 million. So from excise and that excise tax, they get just over $1 million. Again, that's New Zealand Treasury report, January 2018. And hungover employers could be costing New Zealand businesses more than $1.65 billion a year. And they say it's the tip of the iceberg. Okay, that's enough on that. Let's move on. And then, of course, I mentioned physical assaults on police and hospital staff. And ambulance, we mustn't forget ambulance people. In fact, my wife likes to watch these accident emergency ones in England and overseas. And there have been times when somebody's been drunk and they've got stroppy. And you have people who've got broken legs who, because of the alcohol, they're still standing up and abusing people because they can't feel the pain. Anyway, that's by the way. Perhaps I should take up drinking. Help me with my ribs. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, this is the crunch time. Alcohol and diseases. Okay, we begin with cancer. The link between alcohol and cancer is not actually very well known in general public, both in New Zealand and other countries. And there's been a lot of surveys done, and this book that I've written covers many other countries. We've looked at stuff all over the world. And the ignorance on this is profound. And yet it's a major link with 7 types of cancer. This is according to the World Health Organization News, 2nd of February 2018. And the ones mentioned are bowel, which is colon and rectum, breast, prostate, gullet or esophagus, larynx, liver, mouth and upper throat. Okay, alcohol can cause or have a major link with all those. And the interesting thing is that many cancer cases could have been avoided if alcohol consumption was limited to 2 standard drinks per day in men and 1 standard drink per day in women. And these are the recommendations of many organisations. That's less than what, for example, they say in New Zealand and in most countries, but it should be lower. There was a thing called the British Million Women Study. Showed that just 1 drink a day significantly increased, just 1 drink, the risk of cancer. So we find that even moderate drinking increases the risk of cancer, and it increases with every drink. For example, 2 drinks, standard drinks, enough to raise a person's risk of getting bowel cancer by 21%. That's a relative increase, not an absolute. It's 21% of what the risk already is. And it's been known for some time that just one standard drink per day can increase the risk of breast cancer in women, and there's a 10% increase in the risk of breast cancer for each extra standard drink consumed per day with no safe threshold. Then you've got liver diseases, cirrhosis of the liver. And what's happened is called fatty liver develops in 90% of those who drink more than 16 grams, which is 1.5 standard drinks per day. It's usually symptomless and fully reversible at that level. But in heavier drinking, it can't be reversed. Liver cells die and they get replaced by scar tissue and leads to a serious condition called cirrhosis. Now, the French way of life is often held up, as a good, healthy lifestyle because they drink alcohol. It's not. They have 4 times the incidence of cirrhosis as in New Zealand. There is an alcohol problem in France, and no matter what they say about it, it's good for you. That's nonsense. Then we've got cardiovascular disease. A common belief is that red wine in moderation provides some cardiovascular protection. And people, again, have been particularly referred to what's been happening in France. Now, one of the interesting things is there is a substance in France called, in red wine, called resveratrol. Do you know about it? It's an antioxidant. And it's supposed to have anti-cancer properties. It's not effective. In order to have, the amount in red wine is negligible. That's the first thing. And clinical trials, just using it, is not helpful in preventing or treating cancer. Okay, it's a good antioxidant, be good for other things, but not for cancer. And there's growing evidence that any health benefits of red wine are related to its non-alcoholic components, like the grape skins. And some people have suggested that moderate drinkers live longer than abstainers. Again, that's not true. Now, there is some benefit, right? There's a big debate been going on this, and it can help older people in some respects. But there are other confounding problems, and all the studies done in the past have not been done correctly statistically. Now, I'm putting my other hat on as a retired professor of statistics, and one of the problems is called confounding, where you don't take into account aspects of the person's lifestyle. Now, for example, people who consume light to moderate amounts of alcohol often tend to have healthier lifestyles than non-drinkers. They also tend to be wealthier, more educated, smoke less, live in more affluent areas, are less likely to have been in prison, less likely to be overweight, and in general are better off than both people who drink a lot and those who say they never drink. And that's basically a quote out of a research paper. Also, many abstain from alcohol because they already have health problems. So they avoid the alcohol because they have to. For example, abstainers may have shorter lives because they're ex-alcoholics. They suffer from a medical condition, or you take a medication. Now you'll find that alcohol interferes with so many medications, dangerously. So quoting somebody here, I like this. This is a quote from, actually he's a New Zealander and somebody else's in 2013. But the quote is, "Moderate drinking may be more of a sign of good health than a cause of it." Okay? It's not the cause of the good health. And it's these confounding factors. But that's not the only problem. It's not just confounding factors that cause the problem. There's also what we call misclassification errors. The way they grouped abstainers. In the abstainer group, there'd be those who used to be alcoholics. Right? So that's going to bias the statistics straight away. I don't want to sort of go on about this, but there are a couple of things that you need to know when people start talking about, oh yeah, alcohol's good for you, it does this and then the other thing. And we've got this misclassification error, so I'm not going to go on too much about that, but I want to say another one is D here, underreporting. Now you ask a person who drinks a lot of alcohol, how much do they drink? They will underreport it. They will, and one of the problems in collecting statistics, particularly from questionnaires, which are self-reporting questionnaires, is that they will underreport the amount of alcohol they drink. And so this is a major problem. It's been known for a long time. It's been around, I don't know how many years, but in the US, for example, in a study in 2007, it was as much as 50% underreporting. And the more a person drinks, the greater the tripping over my own tongue. And I get this from governments or sales tax. They can measure out how much alcohol there is. And So the question is moderate alcohol consumption good for the health? The answer, which used to be yes, is now no. Now it's true that moderate alcohol may possibly help the older person only, like my age, for example. They do say in some cases over 55, but it's outweighed by other risks like cancer. So you put together the total risk, and what the answer is, alcohol is not good for you, any amount. And there's a huge survey done with hundreds of thousands of people across countries. It's called global GDB, global disease, something or other. And the conclusion they came to is that no amount of alcohol is helpful. And also too, there was even an article, I think it was either BBC News or The Guardian, which stated the same thing, just very, very recently. Okay, what about general health? Alcohol and general health. Well, first of all, it affects our weight. A standard medium 175ml glass of 13% of red wine contains as many as 160 calories. That's equivalent to a slice of Madeira cake. So to burn off that amount of alcohol, you've got to do 16 minutes running. A large 250mm glass of 13% red wine contains as much as 228 calories, which is more than a jam donut. So at that time you'd have to run for 23 minutes to burn it off. So it's not hard to work out that alcohol you can put on weight. And there's nothing on alcohol labels which tells you about the calories. It's on other drinks, but not on alcohol. I'll go back to labelling a bit later. Also, drinking suppresses a hormone called leptin, and this controls appetite. So that because it suppresses it, you can overeat when drinking. And as a sugar source, alcohol raises insulin and turns on fat storage by increasing fat deposits in the liver. And in middle age, excess fat can lead to fat storage around the middle, which we all struggle with. The so-called beer belly. Mine's just gravity, not beer. And there are no labels for nutrition. Now, labelling is another problem, but anyway. The second thing is alcohol can affect IQ, and it can also increase the risk of dementia. Now, dementia has a very high rate when a person's over 85. I think I'm not that far off actually. It's something like 1 in 2. It's quite a major thing, but it can also increase dementia. It can also impact the immune system. It can also increase the risk of atrial fibrillation substantially. It can increase blood pressure with heavier drinking. And this one surprised me, and I thought, well, I haven't been drinking, I've still got some. It can even affect hair loss. Now, I've never come across that one before, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because of the various processes how it affects the body. You don't want to know all the rest. And alcohol abuse is linked to depression. And what happens, you see, is people may start abusing alcohol due to depression, or they become depressed from abusing alcohol. So it can start it off, or it can cause it. And you can get into a vicious circle. You first drink it because of depression, and then afterwards it makes you more depressed, so you drink more. And so there's a very serious effect on the brain. And this one in particular interests me as a counsellor. I've been counselling for 17 years now, and sleep is often a problem. In fact, my next booklet I think is going to be on sleep. I've been sleeping in a chair because of my ribs, and so I know what it's like not to have as much sleep as I'd like to have. This chair has everything going, and I can drive it now, but things can come up in the night and things can go down. Anyway, alcohol can affect the sleep cycle. It can help you drop off to sleep, but what happens is you then wake up later and you have a restless night. So people will often drink alcohol because it puts them to sleep, then it stuffs up their sleep cycle. So you shouldn't drink alcohol just before going to bed. If you're going to have a drink, you should have it at tea time, but no later. And also, it can interfere seriously with medications and antibiotics, particularly antibiotics, which I've already mentioned. And a really big effect, which is really serious in New Zealand, is the effect on pregnancy. No amount of alcohol is safe with a pregnant woman. 0. In spite of all the things that have been said, you should never drink alcohol. Alcohol is what's called a teratogen. It's anything that interferes with the normal development of fetus. And the Ministry of Health, 2015, believes that the evidence suggests that about 50% of pregnancies in New Zealand are alcohol exposed. 50%, about 300,000 babies, and about 10% will be exposed to alcohol at higher risk binge drinking levels. Surveys suggest that 50% of women mistakenly believe that some alcohol in pregnancy is safe, and 28 to 36% of women continue to consume alcohol during pregnancy. Now the problem is that if you're going to get pregnant, you stop drinking before, because by the time you know that you're pregnant, you've been drinking for too much. And what happens, of course, is when you drink, so does the baby. It goes into the bloodstream. And what it does, it can cause fetal alcohol syndrome, and that's a real problem in New Zealand. I could give you a whole talk on that, but it's really serious. So if a person should not drink alcohol if they're contemplating becoming pregnant, nor after they find they're pregnant, which is too late. The other thing, and there was a news item recently, they shouldn't drink before breastfeeding. Well, there was a death recently, I don't know if you see it on TV, about somebody who drunk a lot. The point is that you've got to, if you have one standard drink, you've got to wait 2 hours before you can breastfeed. Anyway, that's another story, but the point is that you should not be drinking if you're breastfeeding, unless you do some very, very careful things. So summing up, we then asked, is there a safe level of drinking? The answer is no. There's no safe level of drinking. The thing is, and I need to say this, everything in life has a risk. Right? I drove here in my car, my wife didn't want me to do that because of my ribs. I said, I'll be fine. There's a risk that I could have an accident. When we drive a car, there's a small risk. Right? I take it because I need to. And when it comes to alcohol, if people drink alcohol, they're taking on a risk. But the point is that you don't have to, but they do take on the risks. So if a person drinks alcohol, they've got to recognise that there is a risk. And one of the hopes of this book that is going to come out is that people will realise what the risks are, so they can make an informed judgment if they want to carry on drinking. Where are we now? I had a note here about a big, massive study that says all this. It involved 599,000 current drinkers and 83,000 prospective studies and in a number of 19 high-income countries. This is how big the survey was. And the conclusion they came to was what I've just said, there's no safe level. So the evidence is definitely there. There's another one here too, was in The Guardian, another big study. That one involved 195 countries, 694 data sources, 28 million individuals. That's a pretty big study, isn't it? And there are many of these very, very big studies that we're carrying out now. So the evidence is very, very strong. Now, what is serious, particularly with our younger people, is media and the amount of advertising going on. A lot of the advertising these days is sort of kind of underground. It's below the radar. And I'll explain why in a minute. For example, if you have a smartphone and you drink, then you are tracked 24/7, so that social marketers can see you as an active marketer, because you're out there drinking, and they'll make sure you get all the best deals, and things will pop up on your iPhone and all this sort of thing. So people are doing the job for them. They're doing the marketing. And The Guardian, 9th of April 2019, pretty recent, most of Australia's top 70 Instagram personalities are under the influence of the alcohol industry, with almost 3/4 featuring alcoholic drinks in their accounts in the past year. So they're using people. Sports advertising. Now this is the one which to me is a real killer. In Australia, 17 out of 18 men's AFL, Australian Football League is it, and 15 of 16 official NRL clubs accepted money from the alcohol industry for advertising deals. That's huge, almost 100%. Baseball Australia urged other sports to follow its lead after it became the first national sporting organisation to ban alcohol sponsorship. So there's one that stood up. And why did this happen? Because there's a new report revealed that children were exposed to more than 3 instances of alcohol advertising every minute of the 2018 National Rugby League final. Children were exposed 3 instances every minute to alcohol advertising. And the interesting thing is, although alcohol is now less visible on TV sporting events, you don't see it so much. All of New Zealand's main professional sporting teams expect the Breakers, they're the only ones, and I like the Breakers because I used to play the basketball, and of course Grant is they have alcohol sponsors or partners. This is according to News Hub, 21st of April 2018. The All Blacks have had a commercial relationship with Steinlager for more than 3 decades. Every New Zealand Seber rugby team has a beer partner. The Warriors are currently sponsored by Woodstock Bourbon and have had alcohol sponsorship since the club formed in 1995. The Black Caps enjoy the investment of Dominion Breweries, who call Tui the official beer of New Zealand cricket. The Silver Ferns are in partnership with Champagne Veuve de Venay. Now, I didn't know any of that. You don't see it, but it's there. And of course, we have similar problems with clubs in New Zealand. For example, a sample was carried out, and they found that there was a lot of this going on. I'm seeing running out of time, so I want to get onto the Bible and alcohol, because this is where a lot of discussion takes place, and it's quite a big topic, which is quite controversial. The first thing I want to say is that the Bible is a little bit ambiguous about alcohol. I've just got 2 verses here. That's Yahweh, or God, causes the grass to grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, so that he may bring forth food from the earth, wine which makes man's heart glad. That's a positive one. Then we've got in Proverbs, wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, whoever is led astray by it is not wise. And we have this kind of ambiguity throughout the Bible. Okay, I want to make some general observations. I forgot to mention that wine was meant to be a blessing, but instead has been misused. Everything is good for a purpose for which it is created, but anything can be perverted. That's just a general comment from me. Okay, the Bible and alcohol. Drunkenness is strongly condemned in the Bible. Now, I'm not going to go through a whole lot of verses. I'll just mention the one that's up there. I've got a whole lot more. Ephesians 5:18, do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. And we've got instances like Noah and Lot, where they did some things which were not appropriate, mentioned in the Bible because of drunkenness. Where am I up to? Yeah, we've done that one. There are some situations where alcohol is not recommended. For example, it's not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink. Otherwise, they'll forget the decrees and pervert the rights of all afflicted. We know that if you drink, you don't think straight. And then in Leviticus and Ezekiel suggests that wine or strong drink and holiness do not mix too well. The Levitical priests in the service of the temple, the Nazarites and the Rechabites abstained from wine. Daniel and his companions set up a worthy example by refusing to drink the king's wine. And remember that they refused to do the fancy food and also drinking the king's wine. And then when fasting later in life, Daniel abstained from wine. In the New Testament, John the Baptist also abstained. With regard to leadership in the early church, Paul stated that elders, bishops, deacons and older women should not be given to drinking much wine. Paul said that whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And also in 1 Corinthians 11, Paul addresses some issues concerning the taking of communion. There's a verse 21 there which says that the wine that they were having for communion was alcoholic, because those partaking incorrectly were getting drunk. So obviously the communion wine they were using was alcoholic. And of course, wine is often a necessary part of life because of the quality of the drinking water. But this is not longer the case today in most countries. While it is true the Bible does not condemn moderate drinking as a sin, it certainly doesn't celebrate it as something we should all be doing. Okay, so there's always the two sides. Now, the interesting thing is the word yayin, I think it's how you say it, is used for wine 141 times in the Old Testament and can mean either fermented wine or unfermented grape juice. We don't know which it is. And of course, In wine-growing countries, grape juice was just as important as wine. The only thing is you had to have ways of preserving it. The word strong drink is also used for stronger alcoholic drinks. In the New Testament, the corresponding Greek word for wine is oinos, and it can also refer to fermented or unfermented grape juice. So don't always know either the Greek word or the Hebrew word which it actually is. In the Old Testament, there's some verses where wine appears to refer to grape juice. For example, when the saki, or cupbearer, took a bunch of grapes, he pressed the juice into the cup and instantly delivered it into the hands of his master. So there was just grape juice on the spot. It's described in the Old Testament. And grape juice was a common drink in the land of many vineyards. The evidence from ancient writers does indicate that non-alcoholic wine was commonly served to women, children and slaves. The Mishnah, a collection of oral Jewish traditions, states that Jews were in the habit of drinking boiled wine. Don't know what that tastes like. Which was non-alcoholic because it was boiled and also because it was preserved. And the wine was a very important plant, not only in regard to the economy, but also to the theology. I mean, Jesus said, I am the true vine. And you'll find a lot of instances where Israel is described like a vine. And Jesus prunes the vine. Now, of course, also too, wine can be used as a sedative, antiseptic, and for pain relief. For example, in Proverbs 31:6, it says that strong drink shall be given to someone who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress, so they can forget their misery and poverty. And notice the Good Samaritan poured oil and wine on the wounds of a man who was mugged. Right? He used oil and wine because the wine has had a healing property. Paul advised Timothy to drink not just water, but also a little wine for his stomach and his frequent ailments. Now, Timothy lived in Ephesus. It was a decaying city with sewage problems. They poisoned some of the underground water supplies. And of course, since the days of Hippocrates, it was recognized that contaminated water could produce illnesses. And the text says little wine. So it was obviously alcoholic, right? So that's what Timothy was drinking. But it seems that Timothy refrained even from the medicinal use of wine, which is a perfectly legitimate remedy then, for the sake of his influence and the question about leadership in the church, not drinking too much. Even was misguided. Then we've got the crunch one, Jesus turned water into wine. What sort of wine was it? Well, if it was grape juice, then because it was large quantity, 6 water jars or 120 or 180 gallons, that would ferment pretty quickly. However, a lot of stated in the Bible, the ancients did have ways of preserving grape juice. And the ruler of the feast commented on the high quality of the wine, and his senses were obviously not dull from previous drinking. Commentaries suggest that the wine was alcoholic. The point I would make is we can't be definitive because it was created. We don't know what sort of wine it is, so it's left open. It could be alcoholic or non-alcoholic, we don't know. It appears that apparently Jesus drank wine because he was accused of being a drunkard and a glutton. Well, he wasn't a glutton. This could simply be insulting language. You know, calling him a drunkard could be just a way of seeing off at him. And then there's some positive things about wine. Wine to gladden the heart of man. And I want to stop here. I've gone on too long already, so I'll get down to, too far. Paul said, and I think this is quite important for us, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. So maybe instead of asking whether or not drinking is a sin, we should be asking if drinking is profitable. Okay, that changes the whole picture. Now I'm just going to close with a few pictures. That one there doesn't show up very well, but the alcohol industry like to use humour, and all the other rabbits are dead, but the one that's alive is drinking Heineken. It's not a very good picture. Now this is an ad from way back, where it's talking about glow of health and giving it to children, it's a tonic and all the rest of it. That's how they used to treat alcohol. The reality is that, of course, alcohol is addictive. And as a counsellor, I know quite a lot about that. And it's a terrible slave and a chain to people. And that's it. Okay, thank you very much. I've gone on a bit long, but shut it down for the moment. I'll sit down because I've got a cranky knee at the moment, and it's starting to tell me that.
I want to know then is, from the sounds of it, it could be legally labelled a toxin or a poison. Why is it not?
Well, I don't know. Ask the government.
But that's correct, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the New Zealand Medical Association, that's how they describe it. It's described as a toxin. And I've also mentioned about this business about being turning into acetaldehyde, which is carcinogenous. That's well known, but people don't know this. It's just not known. And the problem is, of course, these days, the government, it's all about votes. And of course, if you start raising excise tax, they will say, well, it's going to hurt the moderate drinkers. In actual fact, 25% are immoderate drinkers in New Zealand. I mean, I don't want to get onto this hobby horse about the alcohol industry, but I have no time for it whatsoever. The things they have done, it's like the tobacco industry. Tobacco now, they're into vaping, and the alcohol industry now are bringing out zero or low alcohol drinks. They're moving into the soft drink business, and they use the same kind of bottles and containers and labels as they do for their ordinary alcohol. And so they're trying to shift their markets. Because a positive thing that's happening now is that the amount of drunk by younger people is decreasing. It's decreasing in New Zealand, and it's decreasing overseas. Where the amount's going up is with the middle-aged people, 40s, 50s, that's on the increase with drinking. And so the result is we're still spending a lot more money on alcohol, and the amount it costs the country is enormous. It's billions of dollars. So it really is a very, very serious issue, and the government will not deal with it. Like, for example, when they brought out people under 20 not drinking at all, did we hear much about that? It just suddenly appeared. Why? Because the government did an about face. They said, we want more information, that's what they say. We've got it already. Yes. And people say we need more education. That doesn't work either. Self-regulation doesn't work. You've got to actually put in some legal constraints. That's the only thing that's going to work. And there's so much evidence all over the world that when you've got lax laws like that, you have problems with alcohol. Anyway.
Yeah, one of the distressing things with the local body where the election's coming up over in West Auckland, where they've got the West Auckland Licensing Trust.
Yes.
All the supermarkets have put together and got a person to stand against it to break that.
Yes.
Because you've got people like Pack and Save,
yes.
Countdown, and now Costco's from Australia want to go to West Auckland.
Yes.
As soon as they get rid of that licensing trust hold on it, they'll be able to sell alcohol freely to that community out there. We know that West Auckland and some areas on the shore too, the problems it causes.
They're called LAPS, local alcohol policy. And all over the country, you only got to go to Dunedin or Queenstown, and they've been trying to fight, stop more licensing people coming in, and what happens is everybody gets together on the alcohol side with lots of money, and they've just given up in Dunedin. They can't fight it. And regularly, I get information from a group called Alcohol Health Watch. It covers all the news items about alcohol over New Zealand. And at the present moment, there's lots and lots of fights going on. It's very, very difficult to fight it, to actually implement the things you want. There are whole communities which say, no, we don't want this, but they miss out. And so it's a real problem, the number of retail outlets. We have a huge number. I've got the numbers somewhere which tell you we've got a huge number per outlet. Number of people per outlet in New Zealand. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's just something to do with money, isn't it? You know, I mean, the advertising, the government, the advertising of alcohol, it's a big money-making industry, isn't it?
It is. It's all about money. And that they say, well, look, you know, we should be on any committee that is going to discuss alcohol, we should be on it. The World Health Organization says we don't want anybody who's associated with the industry making policy decisions. They should be on it. They did that with tobacco. See, the interesting thing is that we finally got somewhere with tobacco because Helen Clark pushed that to try and get something done about it. We need somebody now on alcohol who will do the same thing. Let's bring in some proper legislation, let's be real, and let's save the country a lot of money and a lot of heartache.
And how much worse is coming now from all the other easing off of other drugs, that you get in here? Why do you take them in here? Yeah, but there's something funny happened when my wife taking a driving license in Australia. We were amazed that they actually said in the book how much you can drink and get away with in driving. It's complete reverse.
Well, what they found is that much smaller amount than the minimum can affect your cognition and how you do and you react. It's actually a lot lower than people think. So it should be zero.
Well, in Sweden it's almost zero.
Yes.
You go to a party in Sweden, half of them don't drink at all because they're drivers.
Which is great. Which is great, yeah.
Yeah.
No, they've given up, but at least they stopped from killing other people in the traffic.
Yeah.
And as you say, the medical cost is enormous because of this.
Yeah, that's what we pointed out.
But all the other drugs now they're talking about they're going to get loose on the market. Why is that?
See, what worries me is that they're talking about cannabis and trying to control it. They can't control alcohol. So how are they going to control cannabis? I'm well familiar with both sides of the argument. I've got a stepson who's living overseas, and he'll discuss how they're doing it in other countries. And I've been following it up myself. And it's not possible in New Zealand. Our setup is such that there's no way we're going to be able to license cannabis. Now, of course, so what's his name? The guy presenter's got a program on at the moment on TV. What's his name? Patrick. Pat. What's his name? Yeah, and I saw the one with the first one, which was about cannabis oil, which can be helpful. Now, I've got no qualms with using cannabis for painkiller because it's no different than other painkillers. I mean, I've been on tramadol, which is I can't take it actually. I found it fixes my other things. But tramadol is not a nice drug, but it's no different. It's an opioid. And in America, they have a problem with opioids at the moment. It's a major problem. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with it to help medicinally. I'm talking too much, so my tongue must be getting a bit loose. You know, so I have no problems with carrying out proper clinical trials, statistical trials, to see if cannabis oil is helpful without the THC. Now, that's fine. But legalising it, that's just opening the Pandora box or a can of worms, whichever metaphor you like to have. But, I mean, it's just crazy. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next year when they do sending out something to see what public opinion is. Referendum, that's the word I wanted here. It's not, the whole business is it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And the trouble is, of course, if, you know, saying to people we're going to raise the excise tax on alcohol, the politicians will say, well, what's it going to hurt the people who don't drink much? It's going to have a negligible effect on the cost. Negligible effect, and any money that's made from it can go into helping with alcohol addiction. And there's not a lot of, we're very under-resourced for addictions, very under-resourced. So I don't know, the whole thing's just a mess.
This High Commissioner in the European Union,
Yes.
he said, we all know what to do except how to win the next election.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I've got a question. I don't know if it's a question. I think honestly, I think the New Zealand law are very, very merciful on different levels. Like, you are not allowed to sell the alcohol to anyone under 18.
Yes.
But that actually didn't put our children into protection at all. Just imagine, you know, any parent can buy like alcohol to bring into home. It all falls onto like the parents' their shoulder if they are going to, you know, give to the kids. No, you won't be like having any problems if you serve alcohol to children at all.
There's no age limit in New
Yeah.
Zealand.
Yeah.
No age limit to watching if a parent gives the alcohol to children. And the evidence is that the earlier you start the child, the more they're going to have problems later on.
Yeah.
And this business about the European thing, teaching them to get used to alcohol is rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
And also that's caused lots of problems. Like we even have, counselor. You must know like CATS, like a community alcohol and drug, kind of like I can't remember the name. Anyway, service.
The AA.
Yeah.
You talking about the AA?
Not AA. CADS.
Oh yeah, CADS. I've been to a course then with CADS. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and it's helping they have adult service and they have youth service as well. That means that the children they've been exposed the alcohol and other drugs by adults actually because they are not able to get the alcohol by themselves, and they cause lots of society problems.
It's worse later on. The earlier you start, the worse it is later.
Yeah, and also there's more problems like alcohol, drink driving, and also raise the risk of domestic violence as well.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so lots of issues just because and also here is no compulsory law for if someone's addicted, have problems with alcohol or drugs, they are not it's not compulsory for them to give up, to send to the rehab to treat those kind of problems.
But they can have to have a gadget put on their cars, and in France it is compulsory.
Yeah, in China, because I'm
In China
from
as
China.
well. Yeah.
If it is, if someone's using of any drugs like alcohol or any other cannabis or then there's not much opium, but
They have to do a breath test with the car.
yeah,
Yep.
and also they will if it's causing enough trouble to self or the family or the society, whatever, will be sent to the rehab like compulsory. But it's not with cats, like I mentioned, you have to be willing to do that. But lots of people they're addicted to any drugs, they are not willing to seek help, so it's kind of causing more and more trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're very hard on the whole society.
It is. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we've been immersed in alcohol for a while, haven't we? It's the kind of I've been immersed in it for just over a year. Yeah, the literature's pouring out all the time. Even probably this week, there'll be more information, published information about the effects of alcohol.
But it's just question that having tough drink drive rules drops the whole consumption of alcohol.
Well, it used to be 0.08, and all of Europe were 0.05. Australia was 0.05, which is a drinking nation. South Africa is 0.05. No, we want more information before we lower it. Suddenly they lowered it. Why? Because they got pressure from within. And there was no song and dance about it because they had to sort of backtrack on what they stated. And so I suddenly find that it was 0.05, and then under 20 was 0. There was nothing said about that because they had to backtrack. There's going to be a lot more backtracking, I think, in the future, hopefully. Eat their words.